The airport was alive with the constant hum of movement, suitcases clattering against the tiles, parents calling to children, travelers hurrying along with purpose etched on their faces. Among the sea of strangers, a small figure weaved her way cautiously, her tiny hands clutching the strap of a worn backpack. She moved with careful determination, dragging behind her a suitcase that seemed almost too large for her slight frame. Her eyes, wide and wary, flicked from one traveler to another, as if searching for someone, or something, that could understand the weight she carried. She finally settled on a bench near the departure gates, curling herself into a small ball on the edge of the seat. Her fingers fiddled nervously with the strap of her backpack, and she pressed her forehead against the cold metal armrest, taking a shuddering breath. She was only 7, but already the world had taught her lessons that no child should have to learn so early: sickness, worry, and responsibility far beyond her years. "Mommy is sick, but she still works," she whispered to herself, the words fragile, almost lost beneath the roar of the airport. They were not a complaint, only a confession, a secret she had carried alone. A few benches away, a man in a tailored suit sat upright, his posture rigid and his eyes glued to the glowing screen of his phone. Every move he made was precise, calculated, decades of experience building an empire etched into the confident way he held himself. He looked up briefly at the crowd around him, but his focus never lingered until those 3 words floated across the space between them, carried by a whisper so soft it might have been ignored by anyone else. The word struck him in a way nothing else had. He felt a sudden, inexplicable tug in his chest, a mixture of curiosity and concern that made him glance again. The little girl's eyes met his, wide and vulnerable, shimmering with unshed tears. There was bravery there, yes, but also a heaviness no child should ever bear. She clutched a small, crumpled drawing against her chest, a rainbow with stick figures that she had drawn of herself, her mother, and a little heart in the corner, a simple offering of love and hope. He put his phone down, finally letting himself focus entirely on her. There was a quiet strength in the way she whispered her truth, and it unsettled him more than he cared to admit. His world had always been about control, results, and precision, yet here was a small child exposing something raw and real, something that could not be solved with contracts or meetings. His chest tightened. He wanted to do something, to reach across the empty space between them and tell her that her worry would not go unanswered. For the first time in a long while, the power of wealth and influence felt irrelevant. And so he leaned forward slightly, just enough to show he was listening, and waited for her next words. The bustling airport, the noise, the constant shuffle of people, all of it seemed to fade away. In that moment, there was only her whisper, and the quiet understanding that even the smallest voices could carry the heaviest truths. Lily shifted on the bench, hugging her small backpack tighter as the man in the sharp suit leaned slightly closer. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but each word carried the weight of her little heart. "Sir, can you help my mommy? She's really sick, but she still works all the time. She doesn't even rest." She held out a crumpled drawing, a rainbow stretching across the page, stick figures of herself and her mother beneath it, and a tiny heart in the corner that seemed to beat with hope. The CEO's eyes softened, the sharp edges of his usual stern expression melting into a rare tenderness. He took the drawing carefully, as if it were the most fragile treasure in the world. "What's your name, little one?" he asked, his voice gentle, carrying warmth that seemed almost foreign to him in such a formal, bustling place. "Lily," she murmured, blinking back tears that threatened to spill. I just wanted someone to know. Mommy tries so hard, but sometimes I get scared she'll get too tired. She doesn't even sleep enough." Her tiny hands shook slightly as she clutched the drawing closer to her chest. Her words tumbled out, not with anger or complaint, but with a mixture of worry, love, and unspoken exhaustion that made the man's heart ache. He studied her for a moment, noticing the way her little frame seemed burdened by the worries of a grown-up world. She had been carrying this all alone, trusting no one but her own courage to survive. In his life of deals and deadlines, he had never encountered a worry so profound, so tender, so entirely human. Something inside him shifted, a tugging insistence that he could not simply walk away, that he had to do something to honor this brave little girl and her tireless mother. "Lily," he said softly, kneeling slightly to meet her level, "you've been carrying a lot on your own. That's very brave, but nobody should have to do that alone. Tell me more about your mommy. What does she do when she's tired?" Lily hesitated, her lips quivering. She cleans the office late at night. She wakes up really early to make sure everything is done. I try to help, but I can't do everything. Sometimes I wish someone could help her so she wouldn't be so tired all the time. She looked up at him, her small face shining with hope and a little fear, as if this one stranger might hold the answer to a question she had whispered into the air for too long. The man's chest tightened. In that moment, the bustling airport disappeared, the noise of travelers, the clatter of suitcases, even the bright lights seemed to dim, leaving only Lily, her whispered worries, and the quiet power of a child's love for her parent. He realized that true strength often came in the smallest forms, and that courage was not the absence of fear but the quiet persistence to care despite it. He reached into his coat pocket, fingers brushing the edges of his wallet, and knew he could not let her leave without some reassurance. Lily deserved more than fleeting concern, she deserved hope, support, and the promise that someone would care. And in that instant, he made a silent vow to himself, he would not let her courage go unnoticed. The little girl's hands trembled as she clutched her crumpled drawing, her eyes wide with cautious hope. The CEO, having listened to her quietly, now felt an undeniable pull to act. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a small envelope, holding it carefully so it wouldn't startle her. "Lily," he said, his voice warm and steady, "I think I can help your mommy take a little break. She deserves to rest. You've been so brave, looking out for her all this time." Lily's breath caught in her throat. She blinked rapidly, unsure if she had heard him correctly. "Really? You mean it?" Her small voice was trembling, a mix of disbelief, hope, and the tiniest spark of joy. She had carried her mother's exhaustion for so long that the idea of someone stepping in to help felt almost impossible. "Yes," he said with a gentle nod. "I want to make sure she knows she doesn't have to do everything on her own. Families deserve support, and your mom works so hard, she shouldn't have to do it all alone." He handed her the envelope, and she clutched it to her chest as though it were a treasure, her fingers pressing against the paper with trembling reverence. Tears welled up in Lily's eyes, and she sniffled quietly, her small shoulders shaking. I'll give this to her," she whispered. "She'll be so happy." For the first time in what felt like forever, her heavy worry seemed to lift just a little. The weight of responsibility that had pressed down on her tiny frame lightened, replaced by a fragile but powerful hope. The CEO watched her, feeling a warmth in his chest he hadn't known he was capable of. In his world of meetings, contracts, and deals, moments like this were rare, almost unimaginable. Yet here was a little girl, teaching him more about courage, love, and resilience than any boardroom ever could. Her bravery was a quiet, persistent force, and it had touched him deeply. Lily stood up, hugging the envelope to her chest. She took a small, hesitant step toward her mother, who was waiting just beyond the bustling airport corridor. The woman's face was pale, her movements slow, but when she saw Lily, her tired eyes lit up with a mix of relief and curiosity. Lily ran to her, throwing herself into her mother's arms, whispering, "Mommy, someone wants to help you rest. You don't have to do everything alone anymore." Her mother's eyes widened, tears spilling down her cheeks as she hugged Lily tightly. In that embrace, the exhaustion, the struggle, and the unspoken fears all seemed to melt away, replaced by gratitude and love. And as the CEO stood a few steps back, watching the reunion, he realized something profound: even the smallest voice can carry the greatest truth, and a single act of kindness can ripple into a lifetime of hope. For Lily, her mother, and even the man in the suit, this moment was a reminder that compassion and empathy could heal, inspire, and transform lives. And in the quiet strength of a little girl's whisper, the world seemed just a little brighter, a little softer, and a little more full of love.